Okay. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2025.
Hi, everybody.
I'm Meghan Murphy. This is Mary Lou Singleton. And this is Where Are All the Women? If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to ask questions and comments, please use the super chat. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. How were your holidays, Mary Lou?
They were great. They were mellow. I took some time off. I'm a bit of a workaholic, so that was a big deal for me to take 4 days off and not do clinic. And it's nice. I knit. I guess I was still working. I knit. I have knit 7 sweaters since October.
Wow.
I know. I've just been knitting and knitting.
That sounds like a lot. I mean, I've never tried to knit a sweater before, but I feel like it's pretty hard.
It gets easier the more you do it. And I'm not doing anything too intricate. I'm not doing any patterns. I'm just making like raglan one color sweaters. But it's my therapy. I feel like it keeps me busy. It keeps me centered. I'll listen to podcasts when I do things. Someone said 7. Yes, I'm very proficient with the sweaters, but 2 were little kid sweaters, so they were fast.
Mini sweaters.
Nice sweaters. Work. Oh, if you still lived in Canada, I'd make you a sweater, but you don't need one down there.
Thanks frickin' God. Although it's been like, it rained twice today. It's been like cloudy and cold all day. I was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie all day, which I don't think I've ever done here in Mexico. Like I woke up and I was like, is that rain? And then it rained again. And I also am like I'm fighting the weirdest non-cold ever since Sunday. I sort of have had like a tiny bit of a scratchy throat and I feel totally exhausted and it never gets worse and it never gets better. Also, I just feel kind of like mildly crappy, but nothing ever happens. I'm like, I feel like some kind of virus is trying to attack me and I'm not letting it, but it's still sort of running me down. And I haven't been sick in ages and ages too. And I blame it on having not bought any raw milk in the past 3 weeks, and also because I kind of partied for 2 weeks and didn't get enough sleep. So
that'll do it.
I think all of those things combined. I woke up and was like, I'm sick. I'm like, that makes sense.
Is it still Christmas season? Are people still doing the long drawn out Christmas party down there?
No. Well, I mean, there's lots of touristas around, but I think everybody really burnt themselves out over the holidays. I tried to take time off over the holidays too, because I never do. I always work through the holidays. I never really ever take time off. But I was like, this year, I'm not missing the holiday season in Sayulita because it's so fun. And people come back and visit, and I want to hang with my friends. And so I just decided, I always have like a bit of work that I have to do. I always have editing to do and things like that. But I decided I wasn't going to schedule anything, and the gym was closed, which was great. And although now I haven't been to the gym in 3 weeks, so maybe not great. But yeah, and I was like, I'm just not going to have anything to do, and I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And I kind of checked out of the internet, which was nice. I feel like I didn't really know what was going on for a long time. Well, a long time for me.
Nice.
A week, probably. And that caused me to fall right out of the algorithm. My engagement went way down on X, and I can't get it back up again because I wasn't doing my routine always tweeting. So I'm going to have to work on that a little bit. But yeah, I had fun. But man, I was really burnt out by the end of it and like slept a lot, and then got a cold and suffered from some emotional turmoil as well. So that probably didn't help. But
yeah, maybe you
can hire recovery.
Can you hire a substitute tweeter?
But I love tweeting though. Yeah. It's not, I mean, I guess, for the purposes of the holiday, you could sort of pre-schedule tweets, but I just, I'm too authentic for that. I want it to be like a real time feeling. This is why I'm poor, because I'm addicted to authenticity. And I'm like, it has to really be me. And meanwhile, everybody else is making more money than me and probably has more free time than me. I don't know. Maybe not. I shouldn't complain about my free time. I live a balanced lifestyle.
That's good. Yeah. And it's good to be authentic.
I just can't believe how much is going on already. Like, we're barely into the first week of January and everything seems insane already. And I mean, I've been looking at videos of the fires in California.
Right.
And I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. It's just, it looks insane. And I can't believe that people are still trying to blame it on climate change.
Well, I'm still processing Appalachia, North Carolina, and Tennessee, and just the fact that one of the major interstate thoroughfares of the country, I-40, is still out from the hurricane, and now Los Angeles is on fire, and it just seems like one massive disaster after another, and it's too much.
It never seems to end, eh?
No.
Talon says walking pneumonia is going around lately. Do you think I have walking pneumonia again?
No, I think you'd feel a lot worse if you had pneumonia. I don't think you would feel mildly under the weather.
Yeah. Talon, I don't know if you know, but I had walking pneumonia, and Mary Lou had to diagnose me. Otherwise, I would have just coughed for all of eternity. I was like, no, I'm okay. She's like, I think you have pneumonia. I'm like, no, pneumonia, no.
Right. I just need more wine. I just
sleep a little bit more.
Yeah, totally.
That was a hell cough, though. That was a brutal cough that I suffered at your house that year.
That was crazy. And then you got deplatformed for being sick.
For having a cough, because the feminists were worried that the feminists would think that I had COVID.
Right.
Even on some level, I wanted to go and be like, I hope they all think I have COVID. Take your mask off.
Totally. Yeah, that was a crazy time.
But yeah, so I'm gonna start coughing right now. Actually,
pneumonia.
Okay, so on Monday, how closely as an American who's living in America, an American Canadian living in Mexico, like how the Americans are paying attention to what's going on in Canada now, eh?
Yes, and we're all thinking, what the heck? How does the parliamentary system work? So
nobody knows here either. So don't worry about it. The way that the Canadian government works, like, I'm never gonna really figure this out. It's so confusing. Because it's from back when it was the monarchy. Like, it was all of that. What we're doing now is all still rooted in when there were kings and queens, kind of behaving as the big boss, and then of course democracy came along, and now it's all mixed up together. The processes are just so confusing to me, but what I can explain as best I can what is happening right now, because of course I woke up on Monday bright and early, probably around 1 p.m. To the news that whenever I say I woke up in the morning, it's never the morning. Just so everyone's aware, I don't wake up in the morning unless forced to. To the news that Trudeau had resigned. And I knew that an announcement of this nature was coming this week because the Canadian news media reported that he was likely to announce a resignation on Wednesday, i.e. today. So I was surprised to hear on Monday from all these people messaging me and saying Trudeau resigned, or sending me like celebratory messages. And because I knew that either at some point he was going to resign, or, an election would be called and he'd lose the election, I didn't want him to resign. I felt like that would sort of let him off the hook a bit. I wanted to see democracy in action, and I wanted the Canadian public to be able to vote him out. And for him to be humiliated in that particular way, I wanted him to know, and it to be unequivocal, that everybody hated him, I suppose, as if it weren't already. I mean, he's probably the only one in Canada who could possibly be in denial about that. And I think he's such a narcissist that he doesn't care. I think he has such disdain for the Canadian people that the people who hate him, which are most people now, you know, I think he's at like 16% popularity at this point. He has very little support in Canada. I think he'll still just maintain to himself that these people are ignorant and stupid and bigoted and hateful and don't know what's good for them. So I don't think that even gets to him.
So do people vote directly for the prime minister in a parliamentary system? That's what so you vote for a party and then the majority party appoints the prime minister? Is that how it works?
You don't even, I mean, you sort of vote for a party. You vote for your representative in your riding that represents that, you know, is attached to a party.
It's called your riding. Is that like because the lord of the land, that was where he would ride through, like his why is it called that?
I don't know. I've never even thought about that. You're asking the really tough questions. I see what's going to happen here. You're going to ask the obvious questions that have never occurred to Canadians because we're just used to operating in clown country. Okay, no, I don't. I have no idea what it's called, riding, but it's like your little area, your little district, and then you have a representative, and the representative will be an NDP member or liberal or conservative or whatever it is. So usually the way you vote is that you vote for the party, but sometimes you're just voting for the representative because you like that person or because they best represent your interests, even if you're not like a huge fan of the party. So, you know, and whichever party wins the most ridings, so like say the NDP representative in that riding wins the most votes, so the NDP wins that riding. And then whoever wins the most riding, either province-wide or federally, that's the party that wins. I mean, sometimes it's a minority, sometimes it's a majority, but and then the leader of that party becomes the prime minister. So yeah, I mean, I wanted him to be voted out, first of all, just for the satisfaction of that happening and because I like democracy. And so I wasn't that excited to hear that he resigned, although I sort of pretended to not make my friends feel bad who were excited. It was like, woo.
Okay, so
he didn't resign.
He didn't resign.
No, he's not resigned. He hasn't stepped down. That's all bullshit. He's a manipulative piece of shit. He says in his speech, he just frames everything in a very manipulative way. He says he intends to resign. So he doesn't actually say he resigned. It just reads that way. And then that's what the media reported. So that's what everybody went with, understandably. He says he intends to resign when the Liberal Party selects a new leader. And in the meantime, he's prorogued Parliament, which means that he's frozen all parliamentary business. And Parliament is responsible for keeping the government in check. So he's prorogued Parliament until March 24th, which is a very long time to prorogue Parliament. That's almost 3 months. And so now he has unchecked power and can't be challenged, can't be held accountable. And there was likely to be a vote of no confidence today, actually, or at least at some point in January, which would have forced him to resign. So he knew that was coming. So instead of being forced to resign, and instead of calling an election, which he should have done if he cared about democracy, he prorogued Parliament. So he froze Parliament, claimed that he intended to resign, but is not resigning. So now he has unchecked power until March 24th.
Gosh. So he pretended to resign, but really made himself a dictator?
Yes.
Fascinating. And how do most Canadians feel about this?
I don't think most Canadians realize that was what happened either.
Really?
Because it was confusing. And again, because the headlines say Trudeau resigned. And he implied that he was resigning. He framed it this way intentionally. You know, he framed his little speech on Monday in a way that presented himself as a peacemaker. He blamed the party. He's like, there's so much infighting. We need a reset. So that's why we're just going to take a pause so everyone can calm down for 3 months, which is crazy. Like, if you just want everyone to calm down, you don't need 3 months for that.
What is the parliament usually doing when they are not frozen by the prime minister?
Passing bills, having arguments, picking on the prime minister. I'm sort of being like, well, I'm like not being super specific, but you know, like they are responsible. The job of the parliament has more power than the government does. The parliament is responsible for holding the government and the prime minister to account and making sure that they're not doing anything bad.
Okay, I know so little about Canadian government, like most
Me too.
Americans. Yeah. Okay.
I'm like always learning as I go along too. And you know, every time I've interviewed so many people about these kinds of things, and I come away with like 2 pieces of information that stick in my brain, and then I'm like, wait, how do you pass a bill?
Well, this is I have learned the word pierogi, which when I was reading it was pronouncing pierogi, like the delicious little Polish ravioli. So now I understand that that's different. And is there a court system that can say, hey, you're not allowed to do this? Is he allowed to do this?
He is allowed to do it. There is a challenge that the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, who has represented me in the past and represented some of the citizens who were persecuted or prosecuted or had their bank accounts frozen under COVID, and they fought the mandates. They're great. The JCCF, I think it's jccf.ca if you want to go check them out, and you can learn more about the case. And also I interviewed one of the lawyers representing the clients putting this challenge forward today. So I'll put that up tonight, and hopefully that can help better explain the challenge. But they're challenging this decision. So Justin Trudeau advised the Governor General to prorogue Parliament, and the Governor General said, okay. The Governor General in general goes along with whatever the Prime Minister says. They don't usually challenge the Prime Minister. That wouldn't be a normal thing to do. It is. It's happened a number of times, but there should be a legitimate reason for it. And the legitimate reason shouldn't be to avoid political trouble. And that's why Justin Trudeau did this, because he didn't want to be scrutinized by Parliament. He didn't want this vote of no confidence. He didn't want to be forced to resign. He didn't want to have to be held accountable for anything. And he would be. So he's skirting any accountability. He's skirting the democratic process. So it is arguably illegitimate that he did this. And so they are trying to challenge it through the court system, but we don't know if it will actually go to court. It will be up to a judge to decide whether or not it proceeds. When it proceeds, it might take too long for it to proceed, and then it would be ineffective anyway, because if it goes to court after March, then what difference does it make? They are technically trying to force, I suppose, a reversal of this proroguing of Parliament. So we don't know if that's going to be possible or not. We're probably stuck with this, to be honest. I mean, I think, I support this case going forward, and I hope that it goes through and has an effect, but I don't know that it will.
How much damage he can do between now and March?
I don't know either. I mean, he can do some damage. I don't know the exact details of what kind of damage he would do, like appointments maybe. I mean, he can't pass any bills or laws without Parliament, so I guess there's that. But it's really, the most maddening part about it to me in any case, and I do think that it's potentially dangerous because, I don't know what he'll do during the next 2.5 months where he has unchecked power. It's just that it's such a F you to the Canadian public and to democracy, even to his own party, never mind to the opposition. I mean, he knew that he would lose an election really badly to Pierre Poilievre, who's run on a platform essentially of opposing Justin Trudeau and everything that Justin Trudeau stands for. That's why people support him. That's not the only reason why people support him. I think he's genuinely a freedom-loving guy. He supported the convoy. He came out against gender identity ideology, finally, thank goodness. He's promised to deal with inflation. And the fact that Canadians can't afford to buy, I mean, we'll see, of course, the fact that Canadians can't afford to buy groceries or homes to deal with the immigration problem. But it's so childish. And he's such an egomaniac, and he's such a narcissist, and he's such an overt authoritarian. It's just... it's repulsive. And for him to, stand up and act as though he's the opposite. I always do what's in the best interest for Canadians. Bullshit. Not having a functioning government is not in the best interests of Canadians. Not in any way at all. It's the opposite. None of this is what Canadians want. And he knows it. He's doing what's in the best interest of his ego.
Wow.
So that's what's going on.
I wonder if it will weaken the opposition if most of what they had to run on was not Trudeau.
It might, because if the Liberals are able to regroup and choose a new leader, and that leader happens to be more popular than Justin Trudeau is or was with the Canadian public, it could maybe put a dent in their chances, although I think Poilievre is going to win either way. I sort of think the Liberal Party's cooked after all that they've done.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to create a new charismatic figurehead in that short of time. If there's not someone poised to rise to the throne, they probably will be out of power for a while. Yeah. Well, I have another question, American question for the Canadian. Are they putting King Charles on the money now?
Are they?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Is that a thing?
Well, the Queen is still on your money.
Yeah.
So
this is again something that's never occurred to me. I was
man, all my questions for Canadians.
I can't imagine her money not having Queen Elizabeth on it.
Yeah, I know, right? She was the Queen for a really long time.
I mean, they have all sorts of dead people on money still, right?
That's true. And nobody really likes King Charles.
I don't think people are that into King Charles and be
this guy.
And we like having our animals on our coins a lot in Canada, I think. We have a beaver on the nickel. There's a sailboat on the dime. We have a loon on the loonie, of course.
Very nice.
There's a polar bear on the I love having animals on our money. I think it's so sweet. That's probably I wonder if that's my favorite thing about Canada. It's I said a nice thing about Canada.
But the Queens also have had the Queen, have an animal and the Queen, right?
Yeah, the Queen's on the other side. That's right. Yeah. I don't think they're going to redo the money to stick King Charles.
But they're always making new money.
Yeah.
I don't
know. I mean, I guess you never know. I feel for some reason people would be offended by that. I don't know if Canadians change all that much.
Well, we'll see, because there's a new monarch. I don't understand that either. I really don't understand the Commonwealth and the remnants, all right. So I guess that you don't, I'm going to have to ask another Canadian my question.
I mean, ask some kind of lawyer or maybe a journalist who's been reporting on Parliament or reporting on Canadian politics for a decade or two.
How everything works. Okay.
It is complicated. I'm not an expert, but I will also say it is quite complicated, and I think a lot of people don't understand really how the Canadian system works. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I should just speak for myself. But I know that a lot of people have asked me what's going on with Trudeau and been like, what? Who are Canadian, so I don't think it's just me. I'm just sorry, what were you saying?
Sizink in the comments says that I should have Googled the money question. On May 6, 2023, the government of Canada announced that the next $20 banknote will continue to feature a portrait of the monarch, King Charles
Okay,
III.
well, I guess I haven't seen a $20 bill in Canada since who knows when. Or maybe just like a brand new one. King
Well, I just thought, like,
Charles,
with
$20.
the
That's
powers that
so funny
be.
that I didn't know that. King Charles III bank. Oh no, wait, this is England. Totally
Yeah,
different place.
it's a war on cash. Like, I don't know if they're still going to be minting cash and printing dollars as they try to get us all to use the digital currencies more and more.
Yeah, I mean, aren't we going to have like a one world currency soon anyway? So who cares? I mean, as if anybody in Canada uses cash anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many stores in Canada that won't even accept cash anymore, which I think should be illegal, right?
Oh, the post office here won't take
Like
cash.
getting rid of cash, not taking, that's crazy.
I
Like,
went
how
to the
dare
post
you?
office, which is the US government, and they wouldn't accept cash. And I argue with the poor guy there. And I said, it says right here on the cash, this is legal tender for all goods and services within the United States. And he was like, yeah, we can't take cash. It's like, it is the government. The US government won't accept cash.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was pretty upset about it. He said,
Catherine
because
says no one carries cash anymore. You have to, in Mexico, you have to have pesos. There's tons of places that only take pesos, which is great.
Also,
so just so Canadians know, everywhere else in the world is not like you.
Well, and also in Mexico, using your credit card is risky because the last time I used my debit card in Mexico, my numbers were stolen and I had fraud on my card. So I think that cash is safer in Mexico for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And less costly. You get charged.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You get charged for using your credit card. And I think merchants don't like it because it costs them as well.
Yeah.
It costs on both ends. And the ATMs charge you an arm and a leg when you take money out.
Cash is much more, keep it in the community. But I think that's part of why the shift.
Yeah, totally. And if you want to operate under the radar, which everybody should want to operate under the radar as much as possible, I think.
I agree. Yeah. Right. So this whole Trudeau thing is nothing to celebrate, is what I'm hearing from you. It's just
no, it's really bad. It's really shady what he did, and it's so selfish and disgusting and rude. It's rude.
Yeah.
It's more than rude, but it's rude.
I hope there's an uprising. You can't just shut down the government by fiat like that.
I mean, you can, though.
Apparently, I guess he just
but
did.
Yeah, I mean, I also hope for an uprising. We'll see what happens. I mean, I wonder if he'll do something really abhorrent or really messed up, and then I think there probably would be an uprising, which would be great. And I've also been very amused at Trump's ongoing trolling of Canada and the responding freak out on the parts of Canadians everywhere who are like, we're not becoming Americans, we're strong and we'll defend ourselves. And then everyone in the response is being like, with what guns?
I know, totally. Good luck.
Pussies.
I don't think Trump is going to invade Canada. But if the U.S. does invade Canada, Canada belongs to us now. I mean,
yeah, like, are you crazy? If the U.S. wanted to invade you, they would do it in 2 seconds. It would be literally no fight. You don't have a fucking chance. Give me a break.
Exactly. It would just happen. Come on.
The amount of people who live in Canada is almost the same as the amount of people who live in California. You're not allowed to have guns. I mean, you're also like all spread out across the country. You don't have an organized military like in the way that America does. I mean, as if, are you delusional? And if America wanted Canada, they would have taken them already, many times over. It would be the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah, interesting, the responses about it. And then did you see the dialogue going on about the U.S. acquiring Greenland. There's a lot of
what even
dialogue
is Greenland? Like, who cares? Like, yeah, acquire Greenland. Who cares? Who lives in Greenland? What person lives in Green? How many? I'm going to Google this.
Well,
actually.
I looked it up.
Now that we've been introduced to Google by someone in the live chat, you should just Google this. And say,
this Google thing is really helpful. Greenland has 58,000 inhabitants. I looked it up today.
Oh, you already know. Oh, you're so well prepared.
Well, because I was like, who lives in Greenland? Like you're asking. And 88% of them are Inuit, are natives, and then 12% are mostly Danish. And Greenland is officially a Danish territory. So yeah, I mean, maybe.
So who's in charge of them? The Danish government?
Yeah, Denmark.
Okay. So why would the U.S. get them?
Well, if Denmark is willing to sell it to us, we could, because we're back in those days, right? Like borders are shifting, land grabs are happening, wars are back, and who knows? Maybe it'll be like, why do we have Alaska? Why do we have Hawaii? That's I mean, that's not very close to us.
No.
Maybe we want to buy that. Maybe we want to buy Greenland, because if you look at the Arctic Ocean, there's Russia, and then it's Greenland, and then Canada and Alaska, and Greenland would give us more of a strategic advantage against Russia if something would happen. If you're thinking of the world as a big risk game, which people in power do. I wonder how much they would want for Greenland. Greenland also has tons of oil and minerals and mining, as does Canada.
I mean, I sort of think I did think that it would be nice if America took Canada. I feel like it would improve Canada's economy and freedom. But then when I interviewed Tristan Hopper, he said that he thought that would be bad for America. And I care more about preserving America than I do Canada. Sorry, Canada.
Why would it be bad for America?
I mean, you'd be adding a whole bunch of Democrats.
Oh, yeah.
And people who don't care about freedom and free speech and gun rights.
But Ontario and Quebec.
Ontario kind of sucks too. I mean, it's got Toronto.
Which is where most people.
Alberta votes conservative, but the rest of Canada tends to go liberal, and BC is very left. BC usually goes NDP, not always, but usually. And a lot of Canada obviously usually goes liberal. I mean, Ontario really in a big way dictates who becomes prime minister, because Ontario is such a big province. So it's sort of unfair, right? They have way more ridings than the other provinces do. So they get more of a say essentially in terms of who wins. So if you wanted to, you could blame Ontario for Justin Trudeau, which I do want to.
Interesting.
I don't really like Ontario very much.
Yeah, I could see that. The Free Press did an interesting article on the 10% of Canadians who want the U.S. to annex Canada, and it was interesting.
Do they all live in Alberta?
No, not all of them. Somewhere in BC. One guy says he looks wistfully at the ferry every day and just wishes that he could be American.
Well, I think a lot of Canadians would like to make American money. I mean, Canadians would be better off if they were making American money, and they would be better off with the American economy. That's for sure. The Canadian economy is such shit right now. People just are stuck. They can't afford anything. The inflation's gone up and no one's income's gone up.
And is that because of the welfare state? Is that why?
I think it's in large part because of COVID and just printing money, giving out millions and millions and millions of dollars to businesses and individuals to keep them complacent during COVID. Everybody was getting like $2,000 a month, never mind what he gave to businesses.
Oh my God. And people didn't realize that was going to cause hyperinflation. There's no way you can do that without paying for it with inflation.
I think some people realized and didn't care, and some people didn't realize, and they were like, this is great, thanks Canada. taking care of us. I realized and was like, see you later.
I know.
Sorry.
Right.
I shouldn't have said that out loud.
The U.S. printed a ton of money too, and many Americans were getting lots of free money from the government during COVID, and now they're all upset about inflation, even though they were psyched about the pre-inflationary measure that caused the inflation. Yeah. We'll see. I mean,
they didn't lock down in the first place. If they hadn't locked down and forced people to stay home, then they wouldn't have had to give people money. I mean, it's true. I mean, what do? You force people to stay home and you don't give them money? Like, you can't really do that. The problem was the lockdown. Right.
And the lockdown and the free money made many people supportive of the lockdown, giving people more than what they'd been making, more than their wages. So many people were psyched to get all this money. They were making more money than they ever had before.
Yeah, so there was a problem with getting people to go back to work when people were allowed to go back to work at, retail jobs, at sort of like the more low paid, the kinds of jobs that young people would do, right? That maybe high schoolers would do, or you would do when you were in college or working part-time. People wouldn't go back to work because they were making more money off of these handouts that they were still doing.
Right. And then I still see people saying COVID proved that universal basic income can work, which drives me insane. As somebody who was deemed essential / expendable by the government and who worked every day through COVID and didn't get a cent from the government, I'm resentful about it. Really resentful about all the people who want a free ride and don't seem to understand that many of us were keeping the world going while they were getting a check from the government and baking sourdough bread and doing arts and crafts and just,
and telling telling everybody else to like calm down and it's fine.
Or stay the fuck home.
What's the problem? It's so nice. I'm spending more time with my family.
I know, right?
As if everybody has like a house with a yard and a family and like staying at home and hates freedom. And it's like, great, I never wanted to go out anyway. The amount of people in Canada, and as probably was true in other places too, but I saw it a lot in Canada. The amount of people kind of in my age range and younger, millennials who were like, well, I don't like going out anyway. Like, I have social anxiety anyway. Just stay at home with my Netflix and my Uber Eats and be safe. What are you complaining about? And the government's giving me money. This is awesome.
I know. People
they all got fat. That was their karma.
I'm still really mad about it. Yeah, well, we'll see. I think it's an exciting time watching the power dynamics shift. We'll see what happens. I guess the election results were certified by the U.S. Congress, and there wasn't anyone who tried to block Trump winning. And there will be an inauguration, and we will see what's coming next. And
apparently, free speech is returning to the ever relevant Facebook. It's like, who cares? Who cares? Everybody left because it sucked so bad. You think people are going to come back? I mean, I don't care what Mark Zuckerberg thinks. People are like, I believe him. I mean, I believe him, don't believe him, whatever. He's a billionaire. He's, this is about money for him. And he was incentivized to crack down on free speech. So he did. Now he's incentivized to claim that he supports free speech. So he is whatever. I don't care. I trust Meta.
I know, right. Yeah. It's a really interesting time. Well, yeah.
Did you watch his announcement and observe the changes that they're making?
No,
supposedly to Facebook. Oh, supposedly,
yes.
Supposedly now we're allowed to say that people who identify as trans are mentally ill. I don't know if we're allowed to use the R word. I suspect not, which is, disappointing. My favorite word. I don't think I'm going to be able to say what I really think. But I just don't. I don't use Facebook. They took me out of the algorithm, so I stopped using it, and I don't like. I find it really insular. I've hated looking at my algorithm for, I don't know, at least 6 years, maybe even more than that, because there was a certain point where, back in the olden days, you used to see your friends' stuff and like your family stuff in there. And at a certain point, I feel like it changed and it was all political stuff. So my whole algorithm was people that I didn't even know just saying the same thing over and over and over again. For me, it became this like radical feminist algorithm. And I was like, this is freaking boring. I don't even know who any of these people are. Get out of my timeline. I'm not seeing anything from people that I actually do know. I'd rather be like looking at stuff from my friends and seeing what they're doing. Although I doubt any of them are using Facebook that much either. But so that was part of my not wanting to use it. And then at a certain point during COVID, around when Justin Trudeau passed his Online Harms Act, which allowed the CRTC to dictate what Canadians see in their algorithms on YouTube and Facebook and so on and so forth. My engagement went from like a lot to, maybe 3 people would see my posts. And I was like, what? Okay, I'm not using this platform anymore. But now we get to have free speech. I mean, it doesn't go, like you post something on Facebook and it doesn't go anywhere, right? Because it can't, like on Twitter, it can spread everywhere and to everyone. Right. On Facebook, it doesn't really work like that. It's just people that you're connected to on your little page that it goes to. So it sort of seems to me that it functions in a way that's more conducive to maybe staying up to date with friends and family, but not for political purposes. So the fact that they're allowing political posts back in the timeline now, I didn't even know that they took them out. I mean,
interesting.
Who cares?
Are they going to stop censoring Instagram as well?
Well,
like same company.
I doubt it, but I mean, I assume that would be the claim because it's all meta now.
Yeah. Yeah. Times are changing and these tech bros are moving with the shifting power. It makes me trust them less when they're fickle like this. Musk was out ahead of it, and I'm not a huge fan of any billionaire, but I do appreciate what he did with X for sure. And that was an authentic move on his part, I believe. Zuckerberg's just in his wake, he's like, people are tired of censorship and there's a new administration coming in. I better align with the power dynamics. And that feels cowardly and
inauthentic.
Yeah, exactly. Or duplicitous. It doesn't feel real.
No, yeah, totally. I mean, Musk did this when it was politically dangerous and unpopular to do so, and he was punished for it. Advertisers pulled out. He was canceled in Brazil. The Democrats went after him really hard.
Democrats were saying if they gained power, they might jail him.
Yeah,
they were really threatening him.
And Zuckerberg's doing it because it's like politically now. He's like, oh, I have to because Trump won.
I have to work with the incoming administration and keep getting government contracts and for spying on people on Facebook.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been following this. It's a Canadian band that I don't really know, to be honest, but I think called 5 Times August. His name is Brad. I'm having him on the podcast at the end of the month, and I can't pronounce his last name properly, so I'm gonna have to figure that out. But he was super outspoken during COVID, and he's been super outspoken now about kind of the new bravery being expressed by some, and he's pretty angry about it. He was pretty angry about everybody celebrating Meta / Zuckerberg's announcement that now he supports free speech again. He was like, wait, do you guys have like a 2-day long memory? Or just like you punished everybody for telling the truth for 3 or 4 or however many years, and now he's suddenly changed his mind because it's convenient for him and his company, and you guys are all cheering for him. And he was also super critical of Whitney Cummings, which I've sort of gone back and forth on myself. Did you watch her CNN roast?
Yeah, I loved what she was saying, and I loved that it was an announcement that the cultural winds have shifted. Was she has she turned on what, like, has she shifted? Is she a hypocrite? Did she profess different beliefs in the past?
I haven't followed her closely enough to know. I'm not like a huge fan of her. I don't think she's ever been particularly brave. But I liked what she said too. I thought that it was sort of good of her to stick it to the man, as it were, when she had the platform to do so. I don't know if it was brave, because at this point, I don't think you get canceled for saying those things in the same way that you did in the past. So I think this Brad is feeling bitter in the same way that we feel bitter when people are now all of a sudden announcing that men aren't women and acting like they're brave. And you're like, where were you 5-6 years ago when the rest of us were being threatened and censored and blacklisted and fired for saying all this? And now you announce this and act like you're saying something revolutionary. Like, get out of here. It's
so fascinating to watch the tide turn and see us being acclimated to it, right? It's like it's being announced through things like Whitney Cummings that you can say these things now. And she got that gig, right? To be the person who could display it to everyone. I have a lot more, I don't know if I have more respect for her. I don't have the animosity toward her that I have toward like Aunt Anna of the Young Turks, where I just think she's just an opportunistic shill who she sees the tide turning and she wants to get ahead of that before she's completely irrelevant. I don't believe she is being sincere at all. I think she's just trying to stay relevant as the money shifts and the cultural belief system shifts.
For sure. I mean, Anna and Jank are phonies and grifters, and that's all they've ever been. I was very relieved to hear Jimmy Dore's rant about this on my podcast. It's on YouTube for those watching on YouTube. I think I put it on Twitter too. X, I'm sorry. And, you know, he has a long history with them and could articulate in vulgar and biting ways the extent to which they are slimy, shady, and evil narcissists. But you know, because I never followed them that closely, a little bit here and there, but I never really watched the Young Turks. And when I did watch, they just immediately struck me as phonies. And then when they started to try to change sides because they saw that the tides were turning, it also struck me as phony and grifty. And I just don't buy that you would be in that position as a so-called journalist and covering these stories every single day, day in and day out, and have no idea that what you're saying is bullshit. Of course they knew that what they were saying was bullshit, and they said it anyway. So I don't really care. How do you change your mind if you never had a mind to begin with? Like, I don't really believe that anything that they said was legit. I think that they were saying what they knew they should say to get clicks and to keep their paychecks. And now they need to say something different to get clicks and to get their paychecks. So they're switching.
We're seeing so many people do it as the mainstream shifts. Brianna Wu being another example of just trying to, I know he's so disgusting. Yeah, I think people are starting to catch on to how gross he is. He was getting so many gigs, and then he just can't.
He can't control himself.
He's so disgusting. He just can't do it. He can't be what he's professing to be. He can't be normal. He has to be a disgusting autogynephile who hates women because he's jealous of us because we actually are women. His defense of prostitution, for saying that many autogynephilic men go into prostitution because it turns them on to be objectified and degraded. I was so glad
like,
he just came out and said it. Yes.
Like, yeah, we know.
Yeah. Right. Right. And he's asking,
because you think that's what it means to be a woman, is to be objectified and degraded and fucked. Because you think what it means to be a woman is to be a hole that can be penetrated. It's not about a vagina. You don't have a vagina. I hope I didn't demonetize us. I guess
Oh no, for saying
it's
that.
whatever. I don't make I hardly make any money off YouTube anyway, whatever.
He says he's like, I have a vagina. I'm like, a vagina is not something you buy, dude. You have had plastic surgery to create the simulation of a vagina, but he asserts over and over again, I am a woman, I have a vagina. It's so offensive. I really hope people are picking up on it. I haven't seen people giving him the mic lately, like we were seeing right after the election.
I mean, when Barry Weiss interviewed him, she just showered him with accolades. She was like, she said something like, this is probably my favorite or one of my favorite interviews ever that she'd done on her podcast. And I was like, not only is this dull, but this guy is a fake ass creep. Like, what's interesting about this? This man has nothing interesting to say. Nothing that he said is not, everything that he said has been said before by many, many, many people in more interesting, more articulate, more courageous ways. Nothing he's saying is new. The only thing that they like about it is that he's, and this is what he's manufactured. This is his brand. I don't even know that it's true. Is he's calling himself a Democrat who's criticizing the Democrats. I'm a progressive criticizing progressives. Who cares? And then that he's a trans who's supposedly critical of transgenderism, but he's not critical of transgenderism at all.
Not at all. Not at all. Even the transing of children, he's into that. Any woman with an intact creep detector is viscerally repulsed by this man. And watching Barry Weiss fawn over him gutted me. I don't know if I will ever be able to respect her in the way I did before that.
It's hard to be like, how did you not see through this?
Yeah, he's
like,
gross.
How can you not see him for what he is, which is a phony and a narcissist? I mean, I just feel like I'm like, where are people's red flag vibes? Mine are not always intact. I've made wrong choices in relationships once or twice before, but but like you instantly, especially if you're a journalist, like you should have those spidey senses. And she's been working in journalism for a long time, and those spidey senses should be intact. And I am really struggling to understand how she couldn't read him as a phony. And
the only benefit of the doubt I can give her is, as somebody who's been in the gender war trenches for a decade now, at the very beginning, some of us were excited at the gender critical so-called trans women, right? There
Right.
was some excitement about, oh, these men who say they're women actually don't believe they're women, and maybe they can be reasonable, and maybe they can help us with the public to understand we're not just a bunch of hateful bigots who want to kill everybody. But within 15 minutes of working with those guys, you realize they're autogynephilic creeps who have nothing to offer the movement. They, like the Debbie Haytons, the Miranda Yardleys, they're parasites on women. They are not helpful to the movement at all.
I mean, I think that those men did sort of have a use early on. I don't think that they have a use anymore, because we can talk about these things openly and freely, and there is a debate. I mean, in Canada, not so much. I mean, it's growing, but as probably everybody knows, every time I've tried to organize any event there, we get canceled every single time. We've lost our venue every single time up until, even September. So nothing's changed in that regard in Canada, but at least more people are pushing back. But I think early on, back in 2016, 2017 kind of thing, these guys who were identifying as transsexual and saying, but I don't actually believe I'm female, it was sort of useful because it did serve to convince people who were really afraid to touch the subject. And I just don't think that's needed anymore, because I don't think people are so afraid to touch the subject anymore. This is being discussed in the mainstream, and it was I think a lot of people early on were really confused. I know it sounds simple and obvious to be like, a man is a man and a woman is a woman and you can't change sex. But I think that when this idea and this concept of transgenderism first came along and people were first encountering it, they were thinking, oh, well, maybe there is a brain thing. Maybe there's a trans brain, and that you actually literally believe that you're a woman, and what can we do? Or, maybe it is reasonable to treat these men as women socially. And maybe I really should go along with this because this keeps them safe from violence and death and whatnot. But we all know that that's not true. We all know that people who identify as trans are not in danger of anything.
No, the only time they're in danger is when they try to trick other men into having sex with them and don't tell those men that they're actually male. And because males are violent, and males who are purchasing sex are especially violent, and men who are in an aroused state who have a baseline of being violent are going to be even more violent, then it puts them at risk. It's not women who refuse to use their pronouns who are
and men who are heterosexual don't want to be making out with a man.
Exactly. And they're mad about
so of course they're mad. They're like, you tricked me. And men are violent. Men are going to react differently to that than a woman would. And I think that it's totally predictable that if you lie to a man and bring him to your house and then are like hooking up with him, and then when you're getting to the sex part, all of a sudden, oh, I'm a man. What you turned me into a gay, most heterosexual men don't want to be in that situation, and it grosses them out and makes them. I mean, of course you'd feel angry about that.
And again, most of those murders that happen in that context also happen in the context of prostitution. These are men purchasing the body of another human being. They are therefore much more likely to be incredibly violent people, right? Prostitution is an act of violence, right? To pay to rape somebody. It's just such a dangerous profession to begin with, or dangerous. I don't even want to call it profession. I'm sorry about that. A dangerous situation. And we're not allowed to talk about that. And then you've got Brianna Wu saying, well, actually, it's very empowering for AGPs to be involved in sex work because it validates them and it turns them on.
I think that probably most of those situations do happen in the context of prostitution, but I have been talking to some men in my life about this issue, and there's a surprising amount of men that this has happened to and they didn't know, not men who were paying for sex, but just were like, I was talking to this girl at a club and then we started making out and then she told me that she was a man, and I was like, oh, okay, no, you have to go. And then the man got angry and sort of would try to extort them or whatever. That can sort of put them in a dangerous situation too, because maybe these people were prostitutes and they didn't inform them that they were prostitute at first, or I don't know. But I mean, it's
people shouldn't be tricking each other.
You shouldn't be tricking people into having sex with you.
No.
It's a really bad thing to do. Never mind dangerous.
Yeah, that's interesting watching his antics. I hope it's turning more people off than on, but I
should say that I think all of these things were happening in Thailand. I don't think that happens in a Western context. I guess gay young Thai men are better at passing a little. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to just go back to Whitney Cummings for a minute because you'd asked if she was a hypocrite. And I don't know that this counts as hypocrisy because these are really old tweets, but Brad, the 5 times August guy, tweeted a screenshot of a bunch of her tweets from 2020. So like April 2020. So that's April, June, July, August, October 2020 of her demanding a vaccine.
Demanding a vaccine.
Getting a vaccine. Like, yeah, okay. Can just like, we need a vaccine, we need a vaccine, we need a vaccine, that kind of thing. Again, that was early on, so maybe she changed her mind since then. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world to have wanted a vaccine before you really realized what that was going to be about and before the mandates came into place. And then he was angry. I mean, I like him, and I do think his anger is legitimate. I just don't know. I haven't decided if I share the anger or not. I don't know enough about her and her background. But I think because she did comedy shows where there were vaccine mandates, and she didn't challenge that. So he feels that she was complicit because she could have said, okay, well, I'm not going to do a show if you're mandating that everybody who comes to my show has to be vaccinated.
Absolutely,
which is fair. Yeah, I mean, take a stand instead of like just standing for your money.
Right.
So that's a fair criticism. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a fair criticism for sure.
Like Chrissy Marr tweeted, I may not be rich or famous or sell out theaters, but this is the exact reason I stood up against the mandates. If just one person got vaccinated to see me perform, I could not live with myself. You don't have to be a doctor or a politician to take a stand against government and media manipulation. No amount of fame or money is worth your soul. That was in response to, again, the fact that she did all these shows where there were vaccine mandates at the theaters in order to get in. You had to show proof of vaccine at the door. So, yeah, I mean, she should have stood up then. I do think that it's sort of bullshit that, she's not hard up for money. She's pretty well off. So she could have stood up and she did. And then lots of people with much less than her did stand up and they lost a lot.
She's a prop. Like she's a paid entertainer announcing through her comedy that we're allowed to say these things now.
Yeah.
And she's doing it. She's getting paid for it. She's getting accolades for it. It's safe for her to do it. It's not at all comparable to Dave Chappelle doing it years ago.
Totally. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Well,
I thought we were going to talk about the
grooming gangs.
And I've been researching it, and really, I think it has contributed to my nightmares. But we don't have to talk about it.
No, I mean, I think we should talk about it. I guess, what do you think about the fact that Elon is talking about this a lot and has brought this to the attention of a lot of people?
I think people do need to pay attention to it. And I think that the demographic shift happening in Europe, in Canada, is an important thing to look at. And it's not racist to acknowledge that bringing in hundreds of thousands to millions of people from a culture that believes that it's okay to rape infidels and to abuse little girls is not going to change the culture and isn't going to put girls and women at risk. I think it's foolish not to pay attention to it. I think that whites, Europeans and Americans and Canadians have so much guilt about their colonial history and their imperial histories that they can't look up and see the now, which is we are being invaded. There is a demographic shift happening, and historically, this is how big changes happen. And do you want this to be your future? Do you want this to be the normal, the new normal? I think that it's so offensive to women and girls that the British government admits they didn't do anything about these primarily Islamic, mainly Pakistani gangs that were raping white working class girls because they didn't want to harm race relations. That's just, I mean, just the sacrificing of women and girls over and over and over again is upsetting to me. And you know what? Here we are. The backlash is it comes into the light, and what's it going to do? Create more racism than it would have if you had just dealt with it when it was happening.
For sure. I mean, I told you, but I don't think I told the stream because I think it happened when we were on holiday, that I had this weird nightmare about getting invaded by Islamic terrorists. And I've never had a nightmare like that before. So I think that was pretty freaky. I have a friend who's been having those nightmares routinely. She's living in Canada. It was really scary. Like, it was, I don't remember where we were supposed to be, but I think I was with my mom and my sister or something like that. And all of a sudden, all these Islamic terrorists just parachuted in. And there were thousands and thousands of them, and they were and started to kidnap people and take us away to rape us and torture us and kill us and take over the country. I'm assuming this is set in Canada, I guess, since my mother and sister were there. I don't know why such a thing would happen in Mexico. But anyway, it was really scary. And I, woke up terrified and couldn't go back to sleep. And I was like, that's interesting.
It's a totalizing belief system that is taking over large parts of the world. Not that long ago, just a few decades ago, Lebanon was a majority Christian country. And once the Islamists take over government and rule, there's no space for anyone else. Like that, it becomes mandatory, or you have to live under, as a second-class citizen, paying I can't remember what the name of the tax that non-Muslims have to pay if they're living in Islamic countries. And what's happening in Europe, it needs to be addressed. And maybe people are for it. Maybe people don't mind the Islamization of the West, but don't pretend it's not happening. It's absolutely happening. And if you look at demographics and the number of babies people are having, it's just a matter of time demographically, unless people who aren't into it make some different choices. And I'm not moralizing, and I'm not saying I'm on one side or another, but we need to have this conversation. I don't want to live under Islam rule. I think it's the worst of the Abrahamic faiths. I have many critiques of Christianity, but it gives women a way better deal than Islam does.
Yeah. I mean, there's no democracy.
No.
In Islam. I don't know what people are thinking. I think I sort of feel like this issue is similar to the trans issue in that people just like to say that, they aren't afraid because it's really white people who are bad. White people are the worst. All white people are bad and all brown people are good. And that makes them good for saying that. And no, of course, they're not scared of any person of color or a homeless person or an addict, and they're not scared on the subway. They're only scared of white men and white women, actually. White women are probably the worst of all. That makes you a good person to say those kinds of things. And so they can pat themselves on the back and not be confronted with the reality of what they're saying and what they're supporting until it's too late.
People really need to read Ayaan Hirsi Ali's books, especially Pray, that one in particular. All of her books talk about this, but Pray really describes what is happening right now in Europe when you allow your country to try to absorb hundreds of thousands of fighting age, unattached Islamic men who come from cultures where women are property, where women have no rights, where women who aren't veiled can be ethically raped according to their holy book. If a woman doesn't wear the veil and isn't Islamic, she is prey. And it's not racist to say that, because Islam is not a race. It's a totalitarian belief system that wants to take over the world.
Yeah. I mean, I have been reading about this, and I've listened to a number of podcasts on it over the years. And I interviewed Julie Bendel about the grooming gangs a few years ago. And I've been trying to get somebody back on the podcast to talk about it again, and have not been successful as of yet, but we'll keep trying. But I mean, I read there was a report in the Free Press that was very good, who they explained that in Rotherham, local police and counselors were notified about systematic grooming and sex abuse by 2001.
Right.
You know, this has been going on for decades and decades and decades, and was ignored specifically because people didn't want to be accused of racism. And I think that even, you know, social workers and the police were instructed not to do anything about it lest they be accused of racism. It's just so sick. I mean, this is just, it's the abuse of thousands and thousands and thousands of vulnerable working class girls. It's so sick what happened to these girls.
Some as young as 5. And these girls were tortured. I mean, it wasn't one case of molestation. I mean, these girls were passed around, trafficked. And the cops on multiple occasions would come into a scene where a girl was being sexually abused by these men, and they would arrest the teenage girl as a prostitute and let the men go free. And they were calling these girls child prostitutes. What was the term? White slags, packy shaggers. Like the cops were referring to them that way, like making it seem as though the problem was these.
They were just slutty, and they were sleeping with these Pakistani men because they're sluts. Yeah,
exactly. It's so infuriating. It's just so incredibly infuriating. And we do need to talk about what kind of culture we want to live in. I'm so tired of Islam getting a pass when we discuss religious misogyny. What the hell is wrong with people?
I know. I mean, all of these feminists, these like left-wing feminists who we know, who talk about the religious right constantly. Constantly, the dangerous religious right, and they won't say shit about Islam. Why is that not the religious right? What do they think it is?
Not just will they not say shit about it, they will defend Islam, and they will punish women who criticize it and call them Islamophobic, kick them, like silence them, kick them out of Facebook groups, kick them out of the discourse because they're Islamophobic and therefore racist. And again, Islam is not a race. It is a totalizing belief system. It's if you look at what has already happened across the world, like the burqa is not the traditional dress of Afghani women. The hijab is not the traditional dress of Pakistani women. It completely decimates women's culture. It completely decimates women's rights. It's not good for anyone. I mean, I don't think it's good for men either, but men get these perks of, oh, you can rape the infidels. Oh, you can, like, men get violent perks out of it, and to own women as property. Maybe that's why more men don't criticize it either, but it's not a belief system that I want anywhere near my government or my, my local society.
It's so clearly dangerous. I mean, we've heard many stories, and it's probably just a sliver of these men, these Islamic men who, are trying to do honor killings. Like there was a story in the media of a father trying to beat his daughter at school, and her schoolmates were protecting her and trying to drag her away from him because she was trying to escape child marriage. He was trying to sell her off into a child marriage. And it's just, I remember there was that debate online about good culture and bad culture, and whether or not we can say, or whether or not a culture is legitimate. Is that what it was? Do you remember this? What the language was?
Right.
I mean, I don't know if legitimate's the right term, but it's like, there are good cultures and bad cultures. And I think that Western culture is generally, of course, is not perfect. Of course, there's lots of problems and bad things, is, good. Democracy is good. Free speech is good. Freedom and liberty and rights are good. equal rights are good, you know.
And there has been a millennium-old war between Western civilization based on Judeo-Christian values and Islam, like the Crusades, the fall of Constantinople. This is an ongoing, continuous war. It never stopped. And Islam gained so much ground in the Middle East and in Asia. Everywhere it goes, you watch those countries fall. You watch women's rights go away. You just watch it completely take over the culture, where now there are blasphemy laws. Now there are honor killings. Now women have to be covered head to toe. Why people think that won't happen in Europe, I have no idea. And then, remember when the Taliban blew up those ancient Buddha statues? Do you remember that? That was such a tragedy. They blew up these 2,000-year-old giant statues of the Buddha that were carved into the side of this mountain. And they destroy everything that isn't Islam. And I think, whoa, if this continues to progress, there goes Notre Dame, there goes the Sistine Chapel. They will destroy all things that they consider blasphemy. That's what this belief system does. It does it everywhere it takes hold. And I can hear all the people critiquing me in my mind saying, you're talking about 2 billion people. Like, no, I'm talking about history. I'm talking about the countries where this has already happened. I'm talking about Afghanistan. And I'm talking about the grooming gangs and the New Year's Day rapes that happened in Cologne a few years ago that also weren't prosecuted because the German authorities didn't want to create bad feelings about the Middle Eastern men who were raping and groping and terrorizing women en masse, nothing happened about it. And the women who spoke out against it were punished.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad people are talking about this finally after, journalists like Julie Bindel have been trying to cover this for many, many years. And there's been a few people raising the alarm about this and being vilified for it. But it's so, the reasons why people stayed silent are just so disgusting and depressing. It's just, it's depressing to know that so much of humanity is invested in self-preservation over the truth and over doing what's right. I think that's all going to trouble me.
Very short-sighted, short-term self-preservation.
Yeah, not even long-term preservation. No. Like throwing yourselves to the wolves in the long term, but for this month, you're good.
Right. What do you think will happen? I'm just seeing where we are in the timeline of history. And it's like, okay, this can't be settled peacefully. There's that's not how history works. That's not how human beings work. If this is rising up in the men and Elon Musk is creating space for the men who are kind of would fight for him as an army, which, we see that happening. Where is it going to go? I'm not excited about the fight, but I think there will have to be a fight to stop this religion from taking over all of Europe.
This is why it's important that America remain the strongest power in the world, is to protect Western democracies. And obviously Islamists are ready and eager to attack at any chance they get and at any sign of weakness. So I wish that people would stop acting like America's the worst thing in the world. Because America does a lot of bad stuff, but on, a lot of levels, it's important that America maintain itself as a strong power and have a strong military. I don't know. I think Islam is bad. I think that you shouldn't be allowed to abuse women. And I think that if you're part of a religion that advocates the abuse of women and children, then that should be canceled.
Yeah, and that your prophet was a womanizing.
Like if terrorism is your religion, I think that's illegal.
Totally.
I feel like it's not that complicated.
And people are like, oh, it's all equal. And I have a lot of critiques of pretty much all religions, but just contrasting the archetype of Jesus with Muhammad, or even just the historical figures of Muhammad, was a warlord and a womanizer,
pedophile
who raped a child, at least one that we know of. The book says to kill people who don't believe what you believe. The book says you can rape women who are not covered and veiled and following the Islamic laws. Those are, they're free for the taking. That's a very different message from the Gospels. And these two religions are not equal. And I agree with Ayaan Hirsi Ali that Islam is irredeemable. It's not. I don't know how it could have a reformation. There's enough kindness and niceness and even like anarchist tendencies, like themes within the Gospels to have laid ground for the Reformation and for people to have many different interpretations of Christianity. Islam, again, it's totalitarian. Like the rules are the rules, and it's the most misogynist of all the Abrahamic faiths.
Yeah, I just wish that people would sort of wake up to the fact that democracy is special and important, that they need to fight for it.
Yeah, there's that too. I mean, it's not just about those two religions.
No, but I mean, I agree with you. I just mean that, I think a lot of this is about not understanding what's at risk here and not taking for granted the fact that you live in a Western democracy and that you have rights and freedoms. Mm-hmm. And that could very easily slip away.
Right. Someone asked, what's stopping Islam from reforming? Ayaan Hirsi Ali talks about that extensively within her books. I think the book Infidel in particular talks about why she believes it can't be reformed. I'm not enough of an Islamic scholar to say one way or another, but there's not room for reformation within their holy book. Their holy book doesn't leave space for shades of gray. Yeah. Anyway,
I also recommend her books. I think that they're very convincing, and Yasmin Mohammed as well is great.
Oh, Yasmin Mohammed is fantastic. Elika Laban, whose family is from Iran, and very upset about what became of the Iranian Revolution and how the Islamic State runs that country now. She's a great person to listen to as well. Sarah Haider, just as a younger voice of someone who became an atheist growing up in an Islamic family, is a good voice. There are so many formerly Islamic women who have fled Islam, women who have risked their own lives to get away from it, speaking out against this. There's no excuse for anyone pretending there's no legitimate critique of this philosophy. That it's to me, it's so terrifying. I have nightmares about it as well. Like, this is a problem.
Yeah, it's really scary, and everyone should be scared of it.
Right.
Right. I mean, freedom's a big deal, and we haven't had it for that long,
No, it's this tiny little sweet spot in history, and it could be taken away really quickly. I'm trying to remain excited about what's happening in the timeline and the shifting going on, but I don't know how we're going to avoid some major conflict over the next decade.
Me neither. I mean, I want people to really stay vigilant.
Yeah, and protect their freedom and to speak their mind and not have any taboos around, if something looks wrong to you, say it's wrong. Don't be worried about being called some kind of phobic person. Don't be worried about being canceled.
And you can also be wrong about something. Like, you can be like, I don't like this. This makes me uncomfortable. This seems wrong. I mean, your gut's probably right on some level, even if you if you aren't able to fully articulate it. And if you're wrong about something, like, it's better to be wrong about that thing than to go along with something so dangerous, to go along with something that is going to result in the loss of your rights and the rights of everyone else who lives in your country.
Exactly.
Or to go along with something that's going to result in rape and abuse.
Right. Right. They're saying hundreds of thousands of girls in the UK were victim to this over the decades. That's so many women. It's on part of the Catholic Church scandal. And I just wonder how many of these voices we'll hear. I was listening to a trigonometry episode from 2 years ago, where they were interviewing a survivor of the rape gangs. And she was
Samantha. She's the one who Andrew Tate went after and threatened to sue. I've been trying to get her
that
on the
was
podcast
her?
too, but I haven't been able to reach her. Yeah, it was her. I listened to that interview a couple of years ago too, and they gave me her email. I emailed Constantine to ask if I could get in touch, and she never responded. And I tried to reach her again recently on email and Twitter, but I haven't heard back. So hopefully I do, because I'd love to talk to her, because that was a great interview. Anyway.
Speaking of Islam, didn't Andrew Tate convert to Islam? Isn't he Islamic?
I think so. He's such a disgusting piece of shit. How anyone can support him is just beyond me. Like, now he's pretending to speak out against the grooming gangs too. It's like, you're a fucking grooming gang.
Exactly. And you were bragging about it, being a pimp. Disgusting. Yeah, he's a very bizarre character. Yeah, it would be great if you could interview Samantha. She's brilliant and really articulate and very damaged. I mean, she admitted she's propped up on psych meds. That's the only way she can function because of what happened to her. And I pray, hope for her healing. But hundreds of thousands of young women with a similar story. That's a lot of traumatized women.
I think she tweeted something, I don't know what the original tweet was, about Andrew Tate, and then he went after her and sent all his minions after her and threatened to sue her. And so then the tweet that I saw read, FYI, I deleted my post on Andrew Tate. I'm barely 20 and have spent the last few days reliving the worst years of my life in the public eye. That does some shit to you. Have some grace, please. So Tate the Talisman, it was Andrew Tate and his brother. You can stop the threats of legal action. I'm sorry, I'm quiet. And then posted another tweet, which she was obviously doing to protect herself legally, saying, my assertions were false, and Romanian courts found the allegations against them baseless. I was wrong to tweet what I did and apologize for doing so. I will not say anything further on them and will cease speaking about their case. So presumably she tweeted something about them being groomers and sex traffickers or something of the like, and they threatened her because they're disgusting human beings.
I don't like it that she's reduced to groveling, especially with her history. That's really sad. Yeah, he's a disgusting human being. What is his nationality? Is he British? What is he? I thought he was American.
Romanian. I think he had a parent that was maybe like British, and then I watched the documentary about him, and now I can't remember. Hold on, let me check. Maybe. Yeah, so his mother is English, and he's American and British. It's weird because he has such a weird accent, and then he's living in Romania, so I guess that confused me too. But I don't know.
Romania is kind of lawless, and lots of
his African American father and his white English mother. He was raised in Chicago, and then his mother took him and his brother to England.
So if you criticize him, you're a racist.
I don't know if he's
Was it you that sent me that hysterical thread of who wore it better, Andrew Tate or the little dog?
Yes.
That was great. The little dog usually wore it better.
Yeah, I like that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder what do you think will happen now that what's the political capital that will be spent regarding the rape gangs and the consciousness brewing around it?
What do you mean?
What will it be used for? Like why is this being allowed right now? Why
like for anti-immigration purposes? Is that what you mean?
Oh, possibly.
I'm not saying that I necessarily think that's true. I guess I'm just trying to. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I don't really care. Like I want these men to be persecuted or prosecuted. And I want this to never happen again. And I want these girls to have justice as best as that can be offered at this point after years and years and years of trauma and abuse. I don't really know if I care if it turns into an anti-immigration sentiment, if the anti-immigration sentiment is against Islamic men. Do I care? Like, do I think that it's important that, you know, tons and tons of men from Arab countries be allowed to immigrate to Europe and America and Canada? Why is that important to me? Why do I need to advocate on these men's behalf? I mean, sure, maybe women and children.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fine with every single woman in Afghanistan being given asylum in the West, you know, and leave the men there to fuck each other and to, you know, like just die off like that.
Rip each other's faces off.
There's nothing redeemable about any of the men supporting that, and not enough men are fighting back against it. And yeah, it's disgusting that we're allowing that to happen. But these were Pakistani men, which is part of the British Commonwealth. So that's a different situation than what happened with like the Syrian immigration. And that gets back to the British Commonwealth, which I don't really understand, and why the Queen is on everybody's money still.
I don't have any answers for you.
Okay, now I know I've learned that. I'm going to have to find another Canadian to ask. Anyway, I hope that something comes of it, that, you know, that these men are brought to justice. I'm just shifting and changing. My whole life I've been very anti-death penalty, but these guys should be killed. They're irredeemable. You can't have, like, we'd kill a dog that had those kind of antisocial behaviors. Like, we kill a dog for biting once. Like these men.
It's evil. It's evil. It's evil behavior.
Exactly. And they're not going to change. Like,
they're not going to change their minds. Like, all of a sudden they're going to be like, actually, I respect white working class 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
No.
It's disgusting. It's so bad.
Well, I guess that now we've determined that we're a bunch of racist bigots. We can sign off. We've done our job. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Sorry, go ahead.
Islam is not a race. Like, I'm fine with all the men in Bangladesh being persecuted for criticizing Islam. That student in Bangladesh was ripped. He was literally quartered by his classmates for speaking out against Islam because they have blasphemy laws there. All of those people are welcome to have asylum in my world, even though they are of the same race as the Islamists. Islam is not a race. It's a totalizing belief system that is horrible for freedom and for women in particular. So we have to stop pretending it's racist to critique.
Well, and I don't think that you should live in a country that you hate. Like, if you hate the values and the people who live in this country, you don't respect their traditions, you don't respect, like, you want to destroy it. Actually, it's not that you just don't respect or that you hate it, it's that you want to destroy it. Then why do you get to move here?
Right. It's not good for the society.
Like, if you like the way things are where you're from, then you should stay there. Exactly. I love Canada because I hate it, and I love Mexico, so I'm entitled.
If the U.S. annexes Canada, will you move back? Will you like it better?
No, I don't want to live in Canada. I genuinely love Mexico. I mean, I love Canada for a reason, but it's not like I'm in Mexico because I have no other choice. I love it here. I love Mexicans. I love Mexican culture. I love the lifestyle here. I love all the jankiness of it all. I love the roosters and the dogs and the kids playing on the street with firecrackers, even though I'm scared of them.
Yeah, I love it too.
I love Spanish, even though I can't speak it. I think it's beautiful. I love listening to it.
I need to come down. I love Mexico. It's such a nice antidote to the infantilizing safetyism of the United States.
Uptightness.
I love it. Yeah. I don't have to wear my seatbelt if I don't want to.
Ha! Don't even have to use your turn signal.
Who's gonna stop me? Yeah, all right. That seems like enough.
Okay, thanks everyone for tuning in. This is Where Are All the Women? I'm Meghan Murphy. This is Mary Lou Singleton. We're here every week on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Mary Lou is online at enchantedfamilymedicine.com and on Substack at Mary Lou Singleton and on X at Singleton_ML.
ML_Singleton
ML_. I think I've gotten it right one time.
Something like that.
In like a year. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. I am releasing that Jimmy Dore podcast to the public, I think tomorrow, with the great Anna and Jenk rant, but I also put it up on YouTube. And I did an interview with one of the lawyers representing clients in this challenge to Justin Trudeau's dictatorship, which I'll try to get up tonight or tomorrow also, but that'll be behind a paywall on my Substack. So do become a paid subscriber on Substack to support my work and get early access to all of my video interviews and podcasts, which is www.meganmurphy.ca. And I'm also tweeting away happily on X at Meghan E. Murphy. And if you want to follow the Same Drugs podcast, you can go to Spotify and click the follow button. That would be great too. I think that's all. Have a good night, Mary Lou. It was good to chat. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Okay. Bye.